like about 5 seconds.
Thank you all for joining us today for this press conference. Today's press conference is on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That's the legislation that Congress passed and the President signed into law that will appropriate $1.2 trillion and create 2 million jobs a year over the course of 10 years. Now, California is going to benefit mightily from this. We'll get about $25 billion in highway funds, $4 billion in bridge money to rebuild some of our bridges that are in bad shape, $10 billion in transit funding, $385 million to build electric vehicle charging stations throughout the state. There's wildfire mitigation money in this that will help us. We've been hit very hard by wildfires over the years. And there is $100 million for broadband expansion for the state of California. And today's press event is to talk a little bit about the importance of broadband and how that $100 million will benefit the people who live and work in California. There's a total of $65 billion in broadband funding in the bill. It's the largest funding the federal government has ever provided for broadband expansion. This is going to help students and schools. As you know, we had our little run-in with distance learning because of COVID. And if your child was doing distance learning and had access to internet, they were getting a better educational opportunity than the students who didn't have that access. So this will improve educational learning. Also, if you were a Medicare recipient and you were getting your health care through telemedicine and you had access to the technology, you got better health care than the Medicare recipient who didn't. And I'm particularly fond of that provision because the expansion of telemedicine in the COVID relief legislation was my legislation, and it provided a more safe environment for health care for Medicare recipients throughout the country. And with broadband expansion, it'll make it even better. So it increases educational opportunities, increases healthcare opportunities, and will also increase entrepreneurial and business opportunities. It's so critically important for businesses to have access through broadband now more so than ever before. So that is going to be an important benefit that will pay off in both jobs, increased economic activity, and healthier downtown business communities. I was honored to be with the President when he signed the bill at the White House, and I'm honored today to be with a group of state and local leaders who recognize how important broadband expansion is, and they're here to share some of their thoughts with us. First, I'd like to introduce Assemblywoman Cecilia Aguilar-Curry, who represents a large portion of my district and represents Napa, where we're having this press conference today. Cecilia?
Well, thank you very much for including me today. This again is a really momentous day when we're talking about broadband. And I'm happy to meet with you, Congressman Thompson, Superintendent Barbara Demko, and our Napa Chamber of Commerce CEO Travis Stanley. All of us have been fighting for broadband. However, I'm most thrilled about the students here at Camille Creek Community School who have joined us today that are needing broadband connectivity and the impacts that it has to them and their studies and their future direction. You know, California, as we've learned a lot during the pandemic, and what Congressman Thompson and my constituents have known all along and for many years, that the availability of internet technology provides access to healthcare, education, job training, and small business access to the digital economy, changing people's lives. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and wildfires of the past several years have made it glaringly clear how critical connectivity is in the times of emergencies, including the massive destruction of our area. We need to make sure we have a transition of students learning from home and what we can do during wildfire evacuations. The accelerated need for broadband cannot be ignored. So over the past couple of years, actually it's been more like 10 years in my life, Senator Lena Gonzalez and I have worked hard to ensure that everyone, local governments, tribal communities, and community institutions have the opportunity to access internet. And we passed two bills this past year, AB 14 and SB 4. The state legislature, it was a difficult bills to get through. We had to get 2/3 vote, and it faced a lot of opposition, and I was shocked it took opposition, and I'm sure many of you watching this felt it was the same way. But we got it through the governor, Governor Newsom, and our state legislative leaders, Senator Gonzalez, and my legislative colleagues. We have shown what it means to boldly lead to a brighter tomorrow. The result of those efforts here in California is $7.5 billion investment in broadband in California. And because of the Congressman's hard work, California will be receiving at least $100 million more from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021 for our broadband internet. This amount will help to connect all Californians and help working families afford internet services once they are connected. And with the implementation of the broadband that we're working on as we speak, we must also push for another critical project of mine for the past few years. And again, Congressman Thompson and I are hand in hand on this, healthcare. Healthcare via telehealth, which makes all telehealth flexibilities permanent that we can include in our governor's executive order at the beginning of the pandemic. So we've introduced AB 32, and with the help of the congressman, we hope to be married together on this bill so we can have telehealth for all. And we extended the flexibilities for one more year, and that year will be ending this coming year. So we need to have that particularly permanent. So all of us at the Capitol, including my colleagues, the budget committees and the policy committees, are strong support of telehealth, and we will continue to work on that with the governor's office. So thank you, Congressman Thompson. Thank you for all your work. We have done so many wonderful things together. We never leave out our rural communities, as well as our urban areas that also suffer without having connectivity. But let's face it, we really need to keep together, and I know we will continue to do that as we move forward. So thank you very much. With that, I would like to introduce Dr. Barbara Nimko here of the Napa School District. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Cecilia, and thank you, Congressman Thompson, for having this event today. The importance of connectivity and internet is indescribable. It cannot be overstated how it has changed education. We've all gone to school, and most of us have been parents. And you remember when you were reading to your child from a book. Well, that's very nice if you could read the book, and the child liked the pictures. But now picture that same book on a device where you can change the language from English to Spanish by clicking the screen, where the book reads itself to the child, and the child can make things happen on that book. For example, if there's a cow and the cow is going moo, if you just see it on a page, those are words. But with connectivity, the child can tap the cow, and the cow is going to shake her head and stomp her feet and go moo. Well, if you're 3 years old, that's pretty exciting. And what do you say when the book is finished? You say, again, again. Well, parents kind of roll their eyes at reading the same book for the 17th time. The device doesn't care and cheerfully reads it again and again. And so children come to school completely prepared to be learning to read. A huge difference. Think about your high school biology and learning about peristalsis. Some boring topic where you had to imagine what it looked like. Using a device, you can actually see it. You can see inside the human body. And would you remember it a lot better by learning it that way? or going back to just a book that sits there and looks at you. So this has changed education, and Napa is a rural county where there are many places that don't have connectivity. When we were on distance learning, and we hope we don't ever have to do that again, but when we were on it, it was huge for students who were able to connect and do their work. For the students who had to get a paper packet, it was definitely not the same. And so we were thrilled that even in our preschool, our children all had iPads and were able to work at home because they knew how to use an iPad. We know that even some of our students who don't live in the most rural areas struggle with having internet at home that is working all the time. So this bill is huge. It has changed the face of education. We are grateful. You're going to hear from a student to tell you how it affects her in her daily life. And thank you, Congressman Thompson. Thank you, Assemblywoman Cecilia Aguilar-Curry. We appreciate all of your efforts to support the schools like this.
Want to do that move thing again?
And it is now my pleasure and honor to introduce the CEO of the Napa Chamber of Commerce, Travis Stanley.
Thank you, Dr. Yumko, and thank you, Dr. Thompson, for inviting me this morning. I think it's safe to say that I speak on behalf of every small business in every community of America, which they've been forgotten for a long time, and it's time to give them a nice. The bill will give them a very, very nice shot in the arm, and to let you know how excited I am about this. Excuse me. It was an issue that I wanted to address when I first started in this role as a CEO 8 years ago. So it's been a long time coming. I welcome, I welcome the dollars that will be coming forth in this bill to be able to address that issue. It won't level the playing field with our big competitors, but it will give them a nice boost and allow them to be able to connect with their 3 million visitors that come to our community, into those communities across the world, across the country. I tell you, it's been tough, and coming through this last year and a half made them also realize just not only how important it is, but how far behind we are. And Napa is not a community that we should be at the forefront of everything that's progressively moving, a community forward. So I want to be brief with my comments, but I can't tell you how thankful I am for your hard work, for everybody who had anything to do with passing this bill, and I look forward to the day when it's activated and our small businesses are able to take advantage of it. And I tell you, they will be thrilled, because what took place during the pandemic when they're opening and closing and trying to rely on again maintaining contact with their customers, who many had no idea whether a vendor was open or closed or what have you. So to no fault of theirs, they're a small business, 1 to 20 employees, not enough, no IT department, no marketing department. So this will give them, so much of an edge that is so sorely needed in the small business community. So I thank everyone who had anything to do with the passing of this bill. Thank you very much. And I would like to introduce Terry Wooten, CEO of the Queen of Valley Hospital.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Congressman, for having me here today. I'm really excited about this bill. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we really have seen telehealth services expand and getting access to people that need care. That's what this bill will do, giving us more access to broadband so that people that need care in our rural communities and our small communities, having access to care to get to a physician without going to an emergency room or traveling hours to try to find a specialist. They will have access to care at their fingertips. At Providence, over the last 2 years, we have done a lot to work with the underserved and the unhoused. By having access to broadband, this will allow us to also reach them differently and uniquely by giving them the access to the care that they So I'm going to be brief my comments, but I just want to thank you, Congressman, for doing this. It's really going to impact not only Northern California, but the entire country by giving patients the care that they need. Thank you. Now to introduce Vintage High School Principal Sarah O'Connor.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this today, whether it's Congressman, Assemblywoman, or our Superintendent, Dr. Nemko. The way that broadband connectivity reaches our students and our teachers and education has never been more important. Nothing will ever replace the in-person human connection of teaching and learning, and I hope that we would never move away from that in all of the future ahead. But the circumstances of the last couple of years, and perhaps in the Napa Valley, the last maybe 10 years, certainly shows us the importance of being able to move to distance learning at the snap of a finger. That connectivity is absolutely critical, as has been said, however, it's not consistent. And what I think is important about this bill is to provide the consistency and thus the equity for all students and teachers to be able to do that teaching and learning to the best of their ability. I'd love to pretend that I'm the expert on this just because I'm a principal, but that certainly is not the case. Who you should really be hearing from are our students. And so I'm very proud to introduce Carolina Padilla Ayala. She's a senior at Vintage High School, and she is, of course, involved in teaching and learning and has been for the last few years when it's been on distance learning. But she's also part of a number of committees and other groups at Vintage High School. So she's on our site council, she serves on our accreditation, our WASC committee, and there are a number of times that she is part of what's going on in its distance, and she's had her own experiences in what her broadband connectivity has been like. So without further ado, I introduce to you Carolina Padilla Ayala.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Connor. I'll be touching base on my experience with the internet. So like most things, everything's on the internet, so I use it for education, like research, checking up on homework. You can use Google Classroom or Teachers. It's a platform where teachers put our future, present, and past homework or lessons for the day, or announcements that they have to share with us, as well as grades. Another platform we use is Aries, where we check our grades, transcripts, assignments, and what grades we find on those, and other data like that. As well as homework, we use it for, as well as checking up on emails, meetings, etc. I've had my fair share of publications on the internet. This past year, we've had to go to different resources using Zoom. I feel like that's probably the hardest thing we've had to go through. My internet probably never worked. I really have to turn off my camera in order for my sound to work, or have to turn off my sound in order for my camera to work, or my video was lagging. It was amazing how the thing was working. But yeah, so it was very complicated. Even till this day, some things are still on the internet or on Zoom. Sorry. So for example, some meetings that I go to, like council meetings, other leadership meetings that I attend, are still on Zoom, and therefore I still struggle sometimes. I've used different equipment, like the Google Wi-Fi, but even that didn't work. So it definitely is a struggle. But we've overcome certain portions of it. But it definitely still is really important to be able to access that sustainable Wi-Fi or internet so that we can go smoothly with our education and our daily lives. That being said, I would like to introduce our representative, Mr. Mike Thompson, and to thank him for the opportunity to let me be here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all very much. And are there any questions?
No
questions. The press people here, I'm sure. Well, thank you all very, very much. Good job, you guys. Thank you.